Hi, wonderful people. I'm Leah Rapaner. As a sociologist, University of Melbourne professor, founder of the Gender Equity Initiative, director of the Future of Work Lab, woman, wife, and mother, I've made it my life's mission to take down every ridiculous gender myth out there. Together, we'll deep dive into the research to get to the bottom of all these misperceptions that are holding all of us back. Don't worry, I've studied these types of questions for decades, and after publishing countless articles exactly on these topics, I know when they are nonsense or real truths. And I'm going to help you learn that too. So here we go. Let's do it. This is Misperceived. I'm going to talk to you today about sex, and in particular, sex and chores. Did your partner do the dishes last night? Did they sweep the floor? Did they use a mop? And did you find that incredibly sexy? Or were you just happy that someone finally cleaned the floor? On today's episode, we're going to talk about, do people who do more housework actually have more sex? Or is this just a misperception? Research from Peter Unda and his team using the General Social Survey from 2000 to 2018 showed that sexual frequency in same-gender married couples has decreased over time. Basically, the number of married men and women who say they have sex weekly or more is on the decline. Let me be clear, this is the most common category. Most people are saying that they have sex once a week or more. But over time, what we're seeing is that the percentage of people who are reporting having sex a few times a month has increased. So fewer people are having sex every week. More people are having sex once a month or a few times a month. And so people are having less sex over time. The question is this just about aging, or is this about, younger people have more sex and older people have less? It's not. Actually, the frequency of sex is going down. And for the broader population, the frequency of sexlessness, not having sex, is also going up. So people are having less sex. I guess the question is this because men are doing more chores or less chores? So if people are having less sex, is housework actually the key? Is the idea that you should just share the housework the way to increase your sexual frequency? Is that a total turn on? Is housework chore play? There's a research study by Van Anders, Hebernick, Brado, Harris, and Chadwick, and the Knowles of Sexual Behavior that came out in 2022. And what they're doing is actually summarizing the research on sex and housework and sexual frequency and giving you a couple of arguments about why couples might have less sex. I want to walk you through them and see if we think they're actually right. Does this actually resonate with you or not? Is this part of the reason why your sexual frequency might be going up or down? And our chores are actually doing the housework a form of chore play. And let's be clear about what they're talking about. They're talking about if you have a man who's doing more chores in the partnership, is that a total increase in libido for couples? So they give a couple of examples, and I'm going to get to the chore one last, but let's take the other ones first just so we can kind of unpack them and see what we think. Some of the examples they give for why, the question kind of for them is what is going on in terms of women's low sexual desire? Why do women desire less sex? And they are saying part of the problem is these dynamics that happen in heterosexual couples, that this can really quell sexual desire amongst women. Some of the arguments they make, they have four. The first one is that women often become the mother or the caregiver in the family, and that this desexualizes the marital role. That once women become the mom to everyone, they no longer want to have sex with their husband. Their desire goes down. Do we agree with it? What do you think? I mean, we're doing some research projects where we are hearing some of this. We're hearing some of this discussion about, mothers taking on this kind of role. But I guess the question then becomes if you become the caregiver, does that actually reduce your sexual desire, or is it just that you're frustrated? I'm going to tell you from my expert opinion, I'm not so convinced that when women step into caregiving roles, that they all of a sudden are I am the mom of this family. I do not want to have sex with my husband. I don't think that's what's going on. As I'll tell you later on, I think what's going on is actually women step into the caregiving role and they're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, and they're tired. So we might associate that with them stepping into this caregiving role, but I really think that it's something else that's coming on de facto. Now, let me be clear. For some of you, this may be true, right? You may be like, oh my God, all of a sudden I've stepped into this mothering role or I've stepped into this friend role and my marriage has changed and the desire has gone down and the sexual sizzle is disappearing. That, of course, is true for some. And maybe you become more platonic and less, romantic. I think that does happen for some, but I think for most women who are doing the care, this isn't necessarily the mechanism. The next kind of argument they make is that women are objectified, that basically sex, and this is a long feminist historical argument, that sex in heterosexual unions is really about women presenting themselves as the object of men's desire, that you are supposed to shave your legs, wax your everything, show up in lingerie, and really be this kind of sexual object for men. And so for women, sex isn't really centered around their pleasure. It's centered around men's desire. This, I think, is absolutely true, that women are socialized from a very young age to think about their bodies as the vehicle or the mechanism to attract, as opposed to the focus on their own sexual desire. So let me say, this one seems right. And what I want to emphasize is like thinking about how do you reconnect women to their sexual pleasure and remove that kind of social norm about sexual desire from the relationship. I stopped shaving my legs about 10 years ago, and it created some tension in the family. It was like, how dare you? What is this? Hair is unsexy. And I had to make the simple point multiple times that that is about socialized norms, right? That actually, if you can't find me sexy, desirable, and interesting with hairy legs, there's something wrong with you, not me. However, the idea is, how do you open up choice? How do you increase the opportunity for women to show themselves in ways that are beautiful, natural, desirable? And how do you reconnect women to their pleasure, e.g. their clitoris? Just pointing that out. The third thing they talk about is gender norms and sexual initiation. And this is the idea that men are always supposed to initiate and women are always supposed to receive. And that's socialized from a young age, right? That women are supposed to be, this is like going back to the Victorian era. This is this idea that like you are supposed to be chaste, that you are supposed to always say no, that men are supposed to pursue. And you can see this still Victorian era kind of notion about who is the initiator and who's a receiver in terms of dating, in terms of sex, in terms of asking people out, in terms of who asks whom to get married. So the idea is that like gender norms about who does what and how they do it is intensifying. It's kind of this idea that, if women are expected to do more in the home, that it becomes more stressful, that it creates time pressure, or it intensifies the mental load. And their argument is that cortisol, which, is this stress hormone that increases when we're stressed, functions like a sexual depressant, decreasing desire. So the research on whether doing more housework leads to having more sex is really mixed. Some studies are showing that actually there's this kind of play hard, work hard connection. So people who do more housework, men and women, have more sex based on the idea that they're just like intense people, playing hard, working hard. But then there's this other research from Sabina Cornrich, who's my friend at NYU, that shows that if men do more housework, and especially that type of traditional housework, the washing the dishes, the laundry, the cooking, and the cleaning, that the sexual frequency goes down. But if men do more of the more traditional stuff, like fixing the car, and women do more of the kind of traditional stuff, like doing the dishes, these couples have more sex and they actually report greater sexual satisfaction. So these traditional divisions of labor are shown to actually increase sexual frequency. I think this begs a question about sexual scripts, right? Is it that we're just socialized to see men who are washing cars or cutting down trees or mowing lawns to be particularly sexy? And then on the flip side, do we see men who contribute more to the housework, who are doing more dishes or engaging in the laundry? Do we find that to be emasculating or less sexy? We can't deny that we're socialized into social scripts from an early age, right? I mean, of course, some of this may be playing into it, but I'm going to give you an alternative argument. I'm going to actually say to you that what I think is going on is that people are time pressed, that people are burnt out, that men who are doing more of the housework and are probably doing more of the childcare and are also probably holding a full-time job. And that in couples where these are more egalitarian, the women probably are doing the same. They're working a full-time job, taking care of the kids, and doing more housework. And so these couples are just exhausted. they're burnt out, they're overwhelmed, they have incredible role strain. And so it's not that men doing more housework means that they have less sex. It just probably means that they're doing more on top of more on top of more, and everyone's just tired. So maybe the problem isn't chores, but maybe it's that people just don't have time, energy, or stamina for their day-to-day lives, let alone sex at night or even during the morning for that matter, right? Maybe people are just so damn tired that their own pleasure gets sacrificed. I mean, we know that people are losing leisure time to work. Why wouldn't you also lose our sex lives too? And maybe mothers who are more egalitarian are better able to say no when they don't want to have sex. And honestly, they just rather sleep. So is this a misperception that men who do more housework get more sex? Well, the answer is yes, it is, because the research is really mixed. So this is not borne out in the data. But let me be clear on what I'm trying to say here. Men should do more housework. And men should do more housework, not because they get more sex, but because men doing more housework leads to better outcomes in their marriage. It leads to better relationship satisfaction. It leads to better marital satisfaction. It means that the women they're married to aren't thinking about breaking up with them. And as our research shows, it means that they aren't actually going to break up with them. So men shouldn't do more housework because it should lead to more sex. And so we should stop dangling this carrot in front of them. We should also stop that really harmful narrative that women are using sex or holding sex from men because they don't do the housework. We should stop saying that women are cold or women are punitive and they're withholding because men aren't doing the dishes. What we should be talking about is how doing more housework is good for everyone. It leads to better outcomes in their families. It creates happier marriages. It leads to greater role modeling for their kids. And it creates more harmony. So men should be doing more housework because housework is good for everyone. And we should stop these harmful narratives about chore play leading to more sex. What do you think? What's happening in your life? Do you see that actually your housework is tied to the frequency of chores done by your partner or not? Does it not matter? Which of the 4 things resonated with you? Or is there something else going on? Let us know how you experience this. We'd love to hear. And if you're lucky, I'll send through a picture I took in graduate school fighting my husband with a mop. I really did. As per always, I thank you so much for listening to Misperceived, where you don't need a PhD, but you just get to come hang out with me. This podcast was produced with the support of the incredible Sophie Squires, the wonderful Kate Danger, the fantastic Rich Berner, and the one and only, the best ever made, Serena Reagan. I would like to acknowledge that our podcast is recorded on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening today.